Howdy, this is San Antonio Family Association coming to you live after the ICOD meeting with the City of San Antonio Development Services Department. And this is July 2nd, 2024, Tuesday. And we're at Texas A&M San Antonio, where we just got through from a 4-hour meeting, a 2-hour formal meeting, where the City of San Antonio DSD, Development Services Department, gave some information, and that was a meeting set up for the public to learn, and yet I'm not sure the public left here with any more clarity. So we're blessed to have Mr. John Whitsett with us, share with his input and opinion on this. John is a private citizen and with a background in real estate, happens to be also City Council Commissioner, Zoning Commissioner, or City Zoning Commissioner for District 10. So we appreciate his expertise in this area. But speaking as a private citizen, and John, what's your input? What's your thought on the overall, from a bird's eye view? What's your thought on the meeting?
The city's trying to recently say how transparent they are. It was very evident from the meeting that transparency doesn't really exist. Not if you ask them a direct, straightforward question. It goes off to different directions. They don't want to answer them. That's why at the end they didn't want direct questions from the public. They wanted them to write comments. They would pull them out of a box and control the process.
Control the script.
Control the script, just like they controlled this whole thing today, where they earlier today called a press conference downtown, and then when I announced to them I was attending, it got pulled all of a sudden, and they did one-on-one interviews with the television station that was interested.
Wow.
I'd say it was probably because they knew I was going to attend. Just like tonight, everybody I talked to, I had 2 or 3 people on my back, trailing around, listening to every word I said.
Yeah, it was interesting. I came up to interview you,
yeah,
and we're doing a Facebook Live interview. And I mean, literally, she came and stood in between us from DSD.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how rude that was.
I thought I was popular.
Right.
It's great to have, people following you around and hanging on every word that you say, and they're really interested. So I've never had that before.
Well, and interestingly, I'm sure it's been the other way as being on the commission, the zoning commission, that if it's something you're in favor with what they're doing, they love you. If you don't like what they're doing, they're going to hate you. And that's not how government's supposed to be.
They didn't like, and they haven't liked my asking questions for information that they've withheld. Other commissioners have asked questions, and it's very evident that they don't prefer us to investigate and try to understand the issues. They just want us to vote yes or no, or whatever it may be.
My recollection of the documents I read of our founding fathers is a government of the people, for the people, by the people, and this seems to be quite the contrary. What would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, we're about to celebrate July 4th and independence and freedom of speech, and it didn't seem to be a lot of freedom to express oneself tonight with the staff, and I think that's really coming down probably from the city attorneys who are trying to solve a legal problem via the Starbright agreement that they've been dealing with. It's been ignored for 20 years, and now all of a sudden, overnight, they want to pass
it's an issue, and
a zoning overlay to stop. But the property's already, all this property that they're wanting to put the overlay on already has zoning. It's all zoned with the exception of land that is outside the city limits.
So this would be density of zoning.
Yeah, double whammy.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to change their zoning, it costs them even more to go through more layers, more red tape. And most of those people down there probably aren't the big developers with money to go fight it. So they're going to be stuck with whatever has been dumped on them, and their heirs someday, all to probably, we all understand, to protect Toyota, which Toyota had the city sign an agreement 20 years ago.
Anything we would all do too. We would push our rights and the best deal for us. That's all Toyota did, was push the best deal for themselves.
Correct.
And the city got themselves in a pickle. Now it's being exposed, and the city's trying to cover up for themselves.
And they want to put the pickle on the backs of 3,000 or 4,000, we don't know exactly how many, innocent property owners down here, and expect them to bear the burden of this, versus the option is to go in and talk to the people individually, acquire their property, purchase it from them, or buy conservation easements and let the people stay there. And in the end, if they will take the time to look at the maps where the floodplains exist, where city owns land, where SAWS owns land, natural boundaries and buffers, the impact and the protection barriers are already there for Toyota.
Well, so it seems like it's corporate favoritism,
Yes.
and at the expense of individuals. And because you have zoning already, like you said,
Yeah.
it's already set there, it's already working, but they violated that zoning,
Yeah.
and therefore they have to create an overlay to justify their unjust zoning, the favoritism, so that then they can create exceptions to exceptions to exceptions.
Yeah.
And so it becomes an overlaying of excuses or exceptions that becomes very confusing. Not everybody's playing by the same rules. And so it seems like very much corporate favoritism of who's greasing the wheels of the city.
Well, it's interesting because that 3-mile Starbright agreement that's been around for 20 years impacted 2 properties recently in front of the Planning Commission. One was owned by a man who's currently suing the city. He's in litigation with them, and he was on Highway 16, and he wanted to build upwards of 1,000 affordable housing units, or maybe 700, I believe, up on Zarzamora, right across from where we are here at A&M, near A&M, the San Antonio Housing Trust Foundation, of which one of the several city council women sit on. In fact, Dr. Rocha is on the Housing Trust Board, and she had previously told Fermín Rajanoff that she wasn't going to support his project. And yet, when they came to Planning Commission a month ago, the city was recommending denial, not only Mr. Rajanoff's property, but the city's property that they had purchased in December under the belief that both zoning and planning was already going to be approved and done. So they went ahead and purchased property, and then Planning Commission was recommending denial, not only in planning, but the planning department was recommending denial at zoning also for the city property that the city spent taxpayer money on.
At least for a period of time until this cloud goes away.
Yeah, if this cloud went away, the 2-mile came in, then that property on Zarzamora would be outside the 2-mile zone. They could go ahead and approve it, but planning commissioners overruled the staff. They approved it, as they did for Mr. Rajanoff's, and the planning and zoning commissioners overruled on Zarzamora. Well, only planning did. The Zarzamora site, the city pulled it for a period of time and will probably come back. But I believe Mr. Rajanoff's was approved by Zoning Commission just recently.
And the irony is so immense.
Yes.
That the city since 2017 has been 100 miles an hour for affordable housing across the city, especially on the north side, especially where there's any supposed need. And here you're going to deny over 700 units of affordable housing on the south side, where it's probably needed more than ever, and they're going to deny it because it's going to expose them for their illegal zoning and agreement on this Starbright agreement.
Yeah, I mean, it's contract zoning. I mean, Councilman Pelaez used to be Toyota's attorney, and he wrote a letter last year admitting that Toyota and the city knew that someday they would get sued over an agreement that they understood was most likely unconstitutional and illegal. But what the city didn't do was actually file that ordinance. They have language about it, but they never filed it. So it would not, I guess, technically be officially in the records, and it wouldn't be legal.
So you're telling me Starbright doesn't actually exist if you went to the city and looked up all their...
Doesn't exist. There's an ordinance about a Starbright agreement or Project Starbright, but the actual document that has the language about zoning and uses in the area only came out publicly sometime last year when a lawyer somewhere released it, and I think it went to maybe... I don't know exactly where, but it's out there now.
So Starbright was the agreement between the city and Toyota on the land use around up to 3 miles out around the Toyota.
At the time, that would have encompassed probably 30,000 acres, that nobody understood and knew that this silent agreement was out there to manage and control and limit development unless you were on the right side of things.
So my understanding was Toyota wasn't at the meeting. They have not been attending all these meetings. It looks like the city has started giving them a black eye, or at least alludes to the fact that this is all for Toyota. What if you had a message for the leadership at Toyota? What would that message be to Toyota to help, and that would also help all the individual property owners, the over 3,000 property owners? It would be win-win-win for everybody.
Well, Toyota could come out the hero and save the property rights issues for all these people instead of it being jammed on them by the city. If they would look logically at the property, what's surrounded, in fact, it's already zoned on all across the north end of it. 10,000 acres is zoned industrial. The biggest issue probably is a little bit to the east and west and to the south, but the south city owns 1,500, 2,000 acres. There's the Medina River. So if somebody would take the time to look at all of those issues, they would end a lack of utilities, the way land's configured, floodplain. There's thousands of acres of floodplain in that area. They could see that they're not going to be inundated by single-family residential that's going to ever create a problem for them, but that nobody seems to want to take a look at it because they're stuck in their battle, and now they're using the excuse, so we're in litigation. I've asked for open records unrelated to that, yet they refuse to give me the open records, and they use the excuse of litigation. In fact, they even tried to say I was interested in water lines and sewer lines, and they said Homeland Security wants to look into it. What am I, a terrorist? That they think I'm going to.
How ridiculous!
It was ridiculous.
So, Toyota could come out looking like the star.
Yes.
And maybe minimize the Star-Brite agreement, and come out for the citizens, for them. Because one of the things that it seemed to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Rudy, who's speaking on behalf of the Development Service Department of the City of San Antonio, said that they just decided basically in a room between the city staff that it was just going to be a 2-mile radius at this point in time. Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
That's what he said, and that's been hanging around for the last 6 or 8 months. And actually, it was in the Texas A&M Regional Land Plan. There was the language in there about a 2-mile and 1-mile radius. All that language was almost duplicative of what's in the Star-Brite agreement. So it came from the Star-Brite agreement. They say it didn't, but all somebody has to do is look across all 3 of them, and they'll see that logic says, no, it came from Star-Brite.
Where's the science in all this?
There is no science.
There's leakage or whatever the issue, the concerns are, Toyota's concerns are for production, industrial production, that might impact people around them. Where's the science behind that? Have you seen anything?
Toyota announced, when they announced 20 years ago, they said they were going to build the most environmentally safe automotive plant in the world. So did they not do that? If they did, then this should not be an issue.
No, there's a couple other industrial.
JCBs come in, Navistar, and in fact the city allowed Navistar to buy land right next to a residential subdivision, and I don't know if it's Southwest or South San, owns a school district site exactly next to Navistar.
So while Toyota might be 100% environmentally friendly, these other companies might not be.
I don't know. I think JCB probably is, but they haven't started construction yet.
Okay. And last thing I have to say is, one of the things I found very inconsistent was, my understanding was before Rudy and the Development Service Department said that there would be no allowance for residential or the property owners to build anything on their property before, and tonight,
no ADUs is what he said.
No ADUs, and tonight he said there could be.
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly?
I heard both, because I was at the zoning commission hearing when he made that statement, and I think it's been said other times very clearly, no ADUs. And now somebody asked him, and apparently they're allowing ADUs. So what made them change their mind? Where are the rules that show that that's the case? It seems to be whatever they're feeling.
Or is that an individual case-by-case basis that you have to hire a zoning attorney for and pay more money to fight for your rights, instead of it being an even playing field with rules for the same for everybody?
Yeah. I think the person who asked the thing tonight didn't have an attorney there. So for whatever reason, he's saying that they or she, whoever it was that asked that question, yeah, you can do an ADU. So that means everybody should be able to do an ADU.
Right. And so one of the questions I asked was, those people that are in the zone, that 3 mile radius or 2 mile radius, that are not in the city currently,
Right.
but the city has an annexation plan that I believe goes into effect in 2027 that makes them part of it. They said tonight that they would not be impacted. They might even be grandfathered, but they weren't definitive on that. What did you learn from that?
Well, my understanding in reading the stuff is that when that annexation plan takes place, and if they have that line drawn outside the city limits that goes over that annexation land, they will immediately be subject to that ICOD overlay and subject to what that says, whatever that says at the time. So I think the city doesn't go that far in addressing it. So yes, today they're not impacted, but when they do get brought into the city limits, they will immediately be subject to that. Now, that may be proven wrong, but everything I've read and talked to people, that's how it works. So they need to pull that line back. Actually, they just need to make it go away. There's no reason for it.
So that's actually a second inconsistency in what they've been saying.
Right.
So they say they're trying to be transparent, but their story is changing.
Right.
And so how are you actually transparent when your story changes?
I don't know, but it's like my friend told me yesterday. He said that the city is being so loudly transparent that you can't hear the truth. And I think that pretty much describes it.
And so for our viewers, sort of a glossary of things, ICOD, what does ICOD stand for?
Stands for Industrial Compatibility Overlay District.
Now, I thought it was named after the Texas A&M plan, but they've changed the name to ICOD now?
There were two things. The Texas A&M plan was a regional land plan that covered, it was really the Toyota land plan, but they called it Texas A&M. That's softer. And that was about a 10,000 acre piece in the middle that they did a study on, but they only engaged the 200 people who actually own property within that. This ICOD is outside of that, yet they were trying to impose the requirement for the ICOD zoning through that Texas A&M land plan through the Planning Commission, but after 3 deferred hearings, the people got that language changed so that ability to expand outside of the Texas A&M plan was removed. The buffer language, the 1 and 2 mile, was removed from it, but it took a lot of pressure and effort and things to get the city to finally back off on that.
So you're dealing with actually 3 different plans. You got the zoning plan of the city,
Yeah.
and then you got the Texas A&M plan, and you got the ICOD plan overlay.
Right.
So you got 3 different things. So lots of confusion, lots of density of plans. We want density of people. The city wants density of people. We got density of planning now.
And it makes it very difficult when anybody's developing anything in the city. They have to first find out if their plan to do something meets with whatever regional land plan is in place or the larger city land plan that says, here's our vision for all this. And that vision is all over the place, and they have sub-levels of vision. If you meet that, or if you don't, let's say you don't, then you have to hire a lawyer probably and go to the Planning Commission and ask for a major plan amendment change. That's a process. It takes you probably 30, 60 days. That would have to get ultimately approved by council.
And thousands of dollars?
Very much so, especially if it's a challenge. It can get very expensive. So if you get that and you still need zoning change, you have to have that same lawyer probably go to the Zoning Commission and make a presentation to them. Hopefully staff approves you. If they don't, you have to fight it. If they do, then you still then have to take both those things and go to City Council. City Council is the final say. I mean, zoning and planning commissioners we don't.
Your advisory.
We're advisory. We just make a recommendation, and council can do whatever they want.
So let's give a summary of where we currently are in this whole process. You learned about this on the Zoning Commission when the city came the DSD came asking for permission to go forward with this and threw it upon y'all. Do the same to planning, and where does it go? Where do people need to know, and where do they need to participate at this point?
They came to a work session and said, hey, here's what we're planning to do. We'll bring it to you in 2 weeks. Yet they gave no information. It was just some maps, and we started asking questions, and the questions weren't answered, a lot like tonight. They were circled around. We tried to ask about the Starbright agreement. They said, oh no, you can't talk about that. That's legal, but yet legal impacts zoning decisions and whether it's legal to do or not. So
Especially when you have to hire an attorney to go represent you. It's
Yeah.
legal and
Right.
to get what you.
And so
want
they
done.
were attempting to hush us up. And so because of that, we did some investigation to try to find what is this about. We discovered a lot of information, including like the Texas A&M land plan, which they had not disclosed to us, but yet had the language in it that was justifying the ICOD overlay and the Starbright agreement, which justified it. They didn't tell us about those. They didn't give them to us. We found them. They were shared around, and city attorneys got upset because I contacted city council about my concerns and sent evidence to them, provided evidence to other commissioners who the city purposely withheld it from because they were hoping we were just gonna vote yes and we'd be done. No questions asked. And they did not like the questions that were being asked, and ultimately it got put off for 8 weeks.
This is local swamp issues. I mean, this is bureaucracy
Right.
at its worst.
And right after our hearing on the 21st, they had planned to ram through the Texas A&M regional land plan that had the same language about overlays and buffers, but they didn't tell anybody. At least with ours, we had 100 and plus people show up because they'd been given notice. But with regional land plans, there's no disclosure.
You had more
required.
people than there were here tonight, because half the people there or a third of them, at least, were staff tonight.
Oh,
City
there were
attorneys,
probably
everybody.
35 staff members tonight.
Yeah. So you went from there to planning commission.
Next day was planning commission. They didn't tell anybody. And I just happened to have found it accidentally a couple of days before, read it, and then noticed that planning commission was the next day, and it was on the thing, and I was like, we've got to go. So a couple of us went. We brought up concerns for the commissioners who had not seen that plan prior to their meeting. They raised questions. It got put off, and then more questions came up, and finally, with continued pressure on there, reasonable modifications were made to make it a little bit more acceptable and not so harmful to people.
And so it goes. Is it going back to zoning commission? Is it going to city council? What's the next step?
What happened tonight will come to zoning commission on July 16th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, and so people can participate how?
Make a phone call to city. They call the zoning.
Call 311.
And ask for what the phone number is for zoning hearings. They will give you a specific number. You can call and leave a message and express your opinion.
Up to 3 minutes.
And if we have a lot of people, it'll be 2 minutes. So I would recommend that they do 2 minutes.
So plan for 2 minutes.
So they don't get cut off.
And the most important thing is is going to be that they want their name and their
ask for
district
name,
and their
address. Name and address, and probably a phone.
Are they
and
for it
phone
or
number.
against it? And then any other comments?
Yeah, and you mentioned the case number, so you need to find out what the case number is, or be very clear about what you're calling about. The ICOD zoning overlay, and say, whatever your opinion is, you can give reasons or not give any.
Or they can show up in person.
They can
and
show up
testify in person. Okay.
which is harder in the middle of, and it's 6 o'clock at night, but it's still difficult for a lot of people.
Right.
So the
At the
phone
Development
call,
Services Department.
and we do listen to every phone call that's made.
Okay, and then after zoning commission, will it go back to planning commission?
Those are separate.
I know. Will it go to zoning planning? Okay, it's already been there. It's already.
Now the ICOD never will go to planning. Never did. It's planning and zoning are separate.
Yep. Okay, so then it
will
goes.
then go to council, or we could postpone it again. Say we need more information. Or we could say we want to make amendments. We want to change the language in here, or we could say no, we deny it. No good. We don't think it should be done. Now, any of those that we do, the city staff and attorneys can take it directly to council regardless of what we say, just like they tried to do with planning commission when Susan Gwynn stood up and said, basically, I don't care what the commissioners recommended. I don't care what these people are saying. We have the right to go directly to council, and just to be transparent, that's what we're going to do. Now, in the end, they did not, because I think they got shot down by higher ups who said, not a good idea.
What's the earliest time you think it would come before city council?
Well, city council's off in July.
Right.
Probably.
Thanks be to God.
And then they have, I think, budget stuff early, probably mid to late August is my guess. If whatever decision we make on the 16th, if it's sent to them.
And then, of course, you contact the mayor, your city councilman, and all the other city
If it
councils.
goes further, and people are concerned and they want to contact the mayor, their councilman, and I would recommend writing letters to all and sending it to all the council, not just your own, but make them all aware of your
They
concern.
always say all the time, I'm elected in this district, but we're making decisions and represent the people, all the residents of San Antonio.
Yeah.
So make sure they know that. Make sure you address it to them.
Right.
So if you'd like to contact John for more information or do that, you can contact the San Antonio Family Association at info@sanantoniofamilyAssociation.com, or cell phone by calling or a message or texting directly at 210-928-7232, which is 210-928-SAFA. And then we'll get you in touch with John. Not only give his information out over the public, and but you can do that. We'll hopefully have information in advance posted on social media at San Antonio Family Association, all the major social media outlets, with instructions on what to do. And look forward to your participating in the city government. We have to be in a situation, John, where the city staff listens to people. I mean, this is not about the bureaucracy and what the staff wants, but about the people. And as you said, this July 4th week, we're celebrating Independence Day in 2 days, and life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And if staff's going to rule today, it doesn't bode well for liberty and pursuit of happiness.
And we overthrew the British government over tyranny.
Right.
And that's essentially
Taxation without representation?
This is a mild form of tyranny, of control and not wanting to listen to the people. And it's like, we've determined what's best for you. Just suck it up and accept it and move forward.
So if that concerns you, and most people, most people's assets, or majority of people's assets, are either in the stock market or in real estate.
In their house.
In their house. And so if you're concerned about your own property and your own property values, and be concerned about other people's properties, because it all can impact you.
Yeah.
And so look out for the other person, because if we don't stand up for other people, one day we're going to be fighting for ourselves and be alone. And so stand with the San Antonio Family Association, stand with people of integrity that are on the commission, like John Whitsett, and come share your views. Make sure the city staff knows, and here's what you have to say.
Help defend the innocent property owners on the south side.
Amen.
Yeah.
Can't do anything else. Thank you for your time, John.